He's already been re-signed, but the man that they call Dewey was often the heartbeat of the Penguins' fourth line. We dive into how he went from a potential trade sweetener to one of the more integral parts of the Penguins' bottom six on today's Locked On Penguins.
Your Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into the Friday edition of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am one of your hosts, Patrick Damp. You can follow me across all social media platforms at Synonym for Wet. Joined as always by the one and only Hunter Hodes. You can follow him on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Before we get into it, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if that first $5 bet wins. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. More on them later. The Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins now find themselves in a 1-1 tie in their Atlantic Division Finals series after blowing a 3-goal lead. We react to your fan take Friday proposals in Dubas for a day. But before we get to all of that, we continue our season in review series here on Locked On Penguins. And as I said in the intro, it's all about the man they call Dewey, Connor Dewar. He re-signed last week to a 2-year, $2.25 million per year deal. He scored 14 goals, 16 assists for 30 points, a career high in all categories, and he has become a staple in the Penguins' bottom six. The theme of this season in review so far, Hunter, continues. A player who had minimal expectations comes to Pittsburgh, has a career year, becomes a big piece for the team, and this, I think in a way, and I don't want to speak too highly or too far of this, but this kind of fits into what Dubas is trying to do in a way with this rebuild retool on the fly. It's finding some of these cast-offs, some of these second and third chance players, and giving them more of an opportunity to thrive. And when it comes to bottom six players, there is no better example of that than Connor Dewar.
Yeah, I mean, you go back to when they acquired him during the end of the 24-25 season. He was in Toronto at the time, had played in 31 games, only 3 points, all assists during that time. He had not scored a goal by the time he had gone over to the Penguins. And then in the final 17 games, when the Penguins actually gave him a chance, when Mike Sullivan, was the head coach, had 4 goals and 7 points in 17 games and was a feisty player in the bottom six. I also felt like he was one of the Penguins' best forecheckers right away. I was kind of surprised. I was like, wow, like, what was he doing wrong in Toronto? Because he looked like a pretty solid bottom sixer in only 17 games played that season. They bring him back for this year, and he takes off even more, of course. 14 goals and 30 points in 78 games. I called him the straw that stirs the drink on the fourth line numerous times during the regular season. People can still disagree with me on that if they wish, just because of how good Blake Lizotte was also on that line. I'm also very excited, Pat, that those two are going to be a duo still on that fourth line after Connor Dewar was rightfully re-signed recently by Kyle Dubas and the rest of the Penguins front office. I just loved everything Dewar brought to the Penguins this year. He was once again feisty. He was a very good forechecker below the dots. He was good defensively. He would block shots. I also thought that he was once again very good on the PK, just an all-around solid fourth liner. A big theme so far, Pat, on these season reviews, we've been giving out a lot of A's. Well, it's going to be the same here because Connor Dewar was fantastic in the bottom six, and I can't wait to see what he does for at least 2 more seasons now in a Pittsburgh Penguins uniform. I'm glad that Kyle Dubas was able to target him at the trade deadline in 2025, seeing, hey, I think there's something here, even though he hasn't really produced that much. He also hasn't played as much as some of the other players have in Toronto. We're going to give him a chance. He's still young enough, plays well down the stretch, earns himself another year, and then fully puts it all together and scores almost 15 goals this season. And just to add on to that, Pat, I'll get into the underlying numbers a little bit later. I thought he was one of the Penguins' best players in the playoffs, especially in game 6. He was all over the ice in that overtime period against the Flyers, had a couple of chances to even win it. He was so good in that series, but especially game 6.
He was. And to your point, I don't want people to think that, hey, we're just putting on our black and gold Yinzer glasses and saying everybody this season was great.
No.
This is just the end result of a season that went far better than anybody could have expected and anybody predicted. So that was kind of the, not even secret sauce, just part of the sauce for this season was a lot of players overperformed expectations, had career years, sent in strong performances throughout the 82-game season, and Connor Dewar's among them. And I'll say this, I don't want to take the focus away from the Pittsburgh Penguins because this is Locked On Penguins after all, but kind of a problem that's happened in Toronto the last few years, whether it was under Shanahan, whether it was under Craig Berube, Sheldon Keefe, whomever, they just haven't seemed to be able to figure out how to use bottom 6 players because with the Minnesota Wild, obviously Connor Dewar wasn't this, but he was pretty damn solid for the Minnesota Wild. And for whatever reason, he fell into a black hole when he got to Toronto. And he's one of a few bottom 6 players that for some reason couldn't figure it out in Toronto, comes here, rediscovers his game that he had in Minnesota, builds upon it, becomes a lot better. But overall, to your point, he is a very versatile player. Now, I don't want that to get twisted. We're not going to put him on the first or second line anytime soon. No. But for a bottom 6 player, he brings what you need in a solid bottom 6 contributor. 30 points this year. That is obviously a career high behind 18 points he had in 22-23 with the Wild. He can kill penalties. He's good on the forecheck. He obviously chips in offensively. He can play a physical game. He can play a little bit of a speed and skill game when you need him to. So for those depth players in the bottom 6, he checks all of those boxes. Now, the challenge for him going into next season is going to be carrying this over. I don't have any doubts that he's going to suddenly backslide. You look at his numbers, he's been relatively consistent. He'll be 27 when next season begins. So he's right in those prime years, but he wouldn't be the first, nor would he be the last kind of player who gets that next deal and kind of falls off a little bit. So his challenge next year will be to continue to be a solid fourth line contributor.
Yeah, it's just sustaining it. And I do think that he is going to do that considering how well he played under Dan Muse. But even, again, going back to the way he played in the latter stages of the 24-25 season under Mike Sullivan, something just clicked with him. Oh, I got out of Toronto. It's a fresh start. And I think it's been pretty clear, Pat, that he really needed that. I just felt like when you go back, you watch some of that Toronto tape, you see the way he was playing, felt like he just lost his way a little bit. Now he got the fresh start. And this is also another player where Kyle Dubas acquired in his mid-20s that the situation wasn't working out with his former team. And he basically said, hey, we have some room here. We're going to give you a shot. And he took that shot and he ran with it. And they've been doing that over the last year and a half, where they're trying to find young players, giving them shots to see who sticks. And not all of these are going to hit. You're not going to hit 1,000 with all of these. And you've seen that on display. There have been players that have just not worked out that they've acquired, even though they're young, and they've just been, they show for a few games and then they kind of go away. But Connor Dewar, he has not been one of those players. He's been very consistent. Obviously, someone like Igor Chinnikov, we can go down the list a little bit more, Pat, but you get what I'm saying. But he now has to sustain it. And I also like, again, that he's going to be playing with Blake Lizotte for the next couple of years. And I really like the chemistry that those two have. And I still think, as of right now, that Avery Hayes is the favorite to slide in on that other fourth line spot, mainly because I don't think they're going to bring back Noah Chari. Some people will say Elmer Soderblom for that final spot on the fourth line, which is also fair. But I kind of see him more as someone that's playing on the third line next year, in my opinion. But you can also interchange both those players. I really like Avery Hayes. I also really like Delmer Soderblom down the stretch. We'll get to his season review a little bit later. You look at the underlyings for Dewar this year, 78 games, about 850 minutes of 5-on-5 ice time. When he was on the ice, Penguins controlled just about 51% of the shot attempts. They had a plus 11 goal differential, 51% of the expected goal share, 53% of the scoring chances, and about 52% of the high danger chances. So above water in all of the metrics, and the eye test very much backed that up. The fourth line, when they were going, Pat, they were cycling teams, hemming other teams in, just doing a really solid job overall. And I think obviously Connor Dewar was a huge proponent of that. So he gets an A for me this season. Really great stuff from Connor Dewar.
No doubt. I'm right there with you on that grade. Give him an A for the season. Really looking forward to, like you said, having him and Blake Lizotte as kind of the cornerstones of the fourth line for the next couple of seasons. If they continue apace, that is a really good fourth line duo to have for a team that's starting to build its way back up towards being both playoff and hopefully one day Stanley Cup contenders. But that is going to do it for our opening segment. When we come back, was not the most joyful night in Wilkes-Barre Scranton as the baby Penguins drop game 2 in overtime to the Thunderbirds, and it was a bit of a heartbreaker. Hunter and I are going to talk about that game when we come back right after this. But we've got a couple of sponsors to get to before we do that, starting with FanDuel. The NBA and Stanley Cup playoffs are here, and every possession matters. If you're looking to get even closer to the action, FanDuel has a great offer for you to get started. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if that first bet wins. That's right, turn $5 into $150 in bonus bets just for getting started. FanDuel was great during the playoffs because it has everything you need right in one place. You can check stats, trends, matchups, all of it before you make your picks. That makes the whole experience feel so much more exciting and so much more informed. Whether you're looking at player props or just following your favorite stars, it adds another level of excitement to every game. The app is simple to use and it brings the juice for the postseason. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. FanDuel, play your game. And we've got one more here. It's our pals at 5 Hour Energy. If you've got a sweet tooth like I do, you know how tough it is to find that perfect treat without all of the sugar. That's why cotton candy 5 Hour Energy shots bring that nostalgic flavor back in a whole new way. It's that classic cotton candy taste that you remember, but with a tasty caffeine boost and zero sugar. It's quick, easy, and it satisfies that sweet craving while keeping things simple and on the go. Always been a fan of cotton candy myself, but as I try to get myself back into shape and being on the go as much as I am, I can't take all of the sugar that comes with all of the energy drinks, and this is a great alternative. It gives me that throwback flavor, and it's a perfect midday pick-me-up when I need it between work and doing this show. It keeps me going so I can read these ads and give you my takes on the Pittsburgh Penguins. So bring on the sweetness with cotton candy 5 Hour Energy shots, available online now at 5hourenergy.com or on Amazon. We're back on the Friday edition of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm Patrick Damp with you right alongside Hunter Hodes. And before we jump back into it, if you never miss an episode of Locked On Penguins, it's time for you to make it official. Join the Locked On Everydayer Club and get access to ad-free audio, our members-only Discord, and so much more. It's built for you, the most loyal fans. Head to lockedonpodcasts.com/everydayer club to learn more. Hunter, like NHL team, like AHL team. The baby Penguins, they were cruising on Thursday night against the Thunderbirds. They took a 3-1 lead into the third period thanks to another goal from Bill Zonin.
3-0 lead, by the way. 3-0 lead.
Oh, it was a 3-0 lead. So I was looking at the graphics today on Instagram because I was watching the game and I also had that crazy Buffalo Montreal game on as well. So got my wires crossed there. But yeah, Goals from Bill Zonin, Tristan Brose, and Avery Hayes. And then the final 5-ish minutes happen. Springfield ties it up. They force overtime. They get the winner in OT. And while I'm not going to panic on this one, especially they played a damn near flawless 55 minutes and then just kind of fell apart at the end, you do have a little bit of concern after a loss like that.
I wouldn't say 55 minutes. I'll push back a little bit on that. I thought they played a perfect 40 minutes. They were by far the better team. They were taking it to the Thunderbirds badly during those first two periods. It was almost like men against boys. And that's how it looked like in game one as well. Pat. The first 5 periods of that series, it was all Wilkes-Barre. And they were showing why they were the higher seed. They were very close to getting a 2-0 series lead with a chance to eliminate Springfield in game 3. But as Kirk McDonald said after the game, I was listening to his press conference, they went into prevent defense and they started to park the bus, and you just can't do that. I don't care if it's game 1, game 10, game 30 of a regular season, especially you can't do it in the playoffs. You can't sit back. You can't play not to lose. And that's what Wilkes-Barre did. They gave up a goal early in the third to make it 3-1. Okay, try to move on from it. But they hardly had the puck in the offensive zone for a lot of the third period. They were just trying to win that game 3-1. You have a 3-1 lead with less than 5 minutes to go, and you don't close that out in regulation. That's just simply not good enough. And luckily for them, they have several days off where they can lick their wounds and they can get right back to it in game 3 in Springfield. Their last series, they lost game 2 to Hershey in Wilkes-Barre. They won the next 2 in Hershey. Let's see if you can repeat history here. But I just felt they got a little too content in that third period, and they started just playing to prevent, and Springfield was coming at them in waves, and they allowed 2 6-on-5 goals in the final 5 minutes. Springfield did pull their goalie for the first time a little bit early, which you kind of expect in those situations, but still, Pat, you can't give up 2 6-on-5 goals in that situation. Gotta find a way to close that out, considering how many players were playing super well. Bill's on it. Another goal from right in front of the net, cleaned up the loose change. He was once again awesome. That came off of some really good puck movement as well. Harrison Brunick, I mean, he is skating like the wind. I can't stress enough to everyone how much his skating has improved since the 9-game trial earlier this season. And I've always felt that his skating is a very good part of his game. It looks night and day better compared to what we saw at the beginning of this NHL season. He was absolutely kicking ass in that game, and I'm really excited, obviously, for his future. Mikael Ilian, his playmaking has been very good. We talked about Tristan Brose. Rocker McGroarty's pass to Avery Hayes late in the second, that cross-ice feed was also a thing of beauty. Nice finish by Avery Hayes. A lot of really good individual performances. Sergei Murashov, of course, was making some big saves, but it all kind of goes to the wayside, Pat, when you blow the game the way that you did. So I guess they kind of saw what the NHL team did in December, and they said, hey, hold my beer.
Yes, but I will say, I'm of a couple mindsets here. One, you just said it, another great performance for Sergei Murashov. You may look at a 4-3 final score and think might not have been the hottest night for the goalies, but 41 saves for Sergei Murashov for the Baby Penguins and 39 saves for Romanov with Springfield. So both of these goalies were seeing a lot of pucks on Thursday night, and for the most part, they were up to the task. So you got to tip your cap to both of them. Then on the other end of it, and I apologize to diehard fans of the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins because I want to see them get rewarded. I want to see them get wins from their team. But at the end of the day, all of the players that you wanted to see have a big game if you are a fan of the Pittsburgh Penguins, they have continued to show up and show out in this Calder Cup playoff run. So that's an encouraging sign for the future. And finally, the thing that I will say about this for Wilkes-Barre is it's not a gut check time. This isn't like Wheeling where they go from on the brink of being able to push their opponent to the brink to now them facing elimination, but you played great for 40, 45 minutes, and you had a great showing in game 1. You know that you can beat this team. You know that you're better than this team. Game 3 isn't until Tuesday. So you have got time to sit around, stew in this loss. And in game 3 on Tuesday, I want to see them come out angry. I want them to come out and say, you guys got your one punch back. We're getting all of our licks back in Springfield, in your building, and we're taking over this series.
That's fair. I completely agree with you on that. I hope that they're able to lick their wounds, get back to practice, focus on the little things that they did wrong in the third period, and get right back after it. Again, the first 5 periods of this series, Wilkes-Barre was kicking their butts. Springfield had no answer for them. You and I were texting about it since we were both watching the game. But the third period happened. Something just clicked for Springfield, and they were able to push back. Wilkes-Barre was not really able to generate much of anything offensively. Hell, they barely were even in the offensive zone. Now it's about Wilkes-Barre getting back to basics, and I think everything should be able to fall back into place. It does sting that they don't have home ice anymore, but that's what happened in Hershey. You went to Hershey, you won both those games. So again, get back to basics a little bit. Can't go into prevent, turtling, parking the bus, whatever other term you want to use. And, hopefully this serves as a good learning lesson for some of these prospects in these big games where, hey, can't just fall asleep at the wheel even when you take a 3-0 lead into a third period, because 99% of the time, Pat, that should be a win. Like, you should be able to close out a 3-goal lead with less than 20 minutes to go every single time, and even a 3-1 lead with less than 5 minutes to go.
Can't disagree with you there. That is going to do it for our middle segment. Baby Penguins, Springfield Thunderbirds, Game 3, Tuesday at 7:05 in Springfield. Obviously, Hunter and I are going to be keeping an eye on that, as well as the Wheeling Nailers this weekend. We'll see if they can keep their season alive, and we will obviously update you on that on Monday. But we're not done yet here on the Locked On Penguins podcast. It's Friday. That means it's Fan Take Friday, and we had an interesting question for you, the listeners. We will get into that when we come back right after this. We've got one more sponsor to get to, though, before we do that, and it is Rocket Money. If you've ever opened your bank account and thought, where did all of my money go? You are far from alone. Keeping track of subscriptions, spending, and bills, it can get overwhelming fast. That is where Rocket Money comes in, helping you take control of your finances all in one place. Rocket Money tracks all of your subscriptions in one spot and can help you cancel the ones you don't need in just a few taps. It automatically categorizes your spending so you can actually see where your money is going, and you can set budgets, get alerts, and stay on top of your upcoming bills. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel those unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. Let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join Rocket Money at rocketmoney.com/lockedon. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Welcome back to the Friday edition of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm Patrick Damp, right alongside Hunter Hodes, and you guys know what we do every Friday. We hand the show over to you as part of Fan Take Friday. And this week's question was pretty simple. We asked, you're Kyle Dubas for one day. What is one, just one, not a whole offseason plan, move that you would make for the Pittsburgh Penguins? And here are some of the responses. And I want to start with the biggest of big swings. And this comes from also a great name on YouTube, Ryan Brust. If you're like me, you got a kick out of that name. But he says, trading with San Jose for the second overall pick, Raquel, Novak, Horkoff, and Winnipeg's 2026 second round pick. You know Dubas wants Chase Reed. Let's get that blue chip defensive prospect that we all need. I don't think they're doing that.
No.
And here's the reason. Like, I don't want to say that I don't think they would balk at that offer. Like, I don't think Mike Greer would laugh and hang up the phone at that offer because it's a lot to offer. That is a lot of good pieces, and San Jose needs to take a step here pretty soon. But the problem is that's also what San Jose needs. They need that blue chip defensive prospect, and they'll be able to get it most likely at second overall with Reed, because even with all the talk and everything else about who's going to go first overall, it is going to be Gavin McKenna for a lot of reasons. Though I understand some people's thoughts that maybe he won't, but it's going to be McKenna, and San Jose really needs that blue chip defensive prospect.
Yeah, I mean, this is only going to make them even deadlier down the line in the future. I said it on Twitter. Apparently my tweet went viral for some reason, but I just found it so funny, Pat, that they almost made the playoffs. Well, we still got some lottery luck. We got the second overall pick overall. Just crazy how that worked. But hey, good for San Jose, good for Sharks fans. That's just going to be another blue chip prospect that's going to help them quite a bit in the short term and the long term. They're going to push even harder for a playoff spot next year. Also, this is the thing, and I appreciate the response. It would also have to take the Penguins' first round pick. By the way, I don't think the second round pick is going back in that deal. Those types of picks hardly ever get traded. So I just don't think it's realistic at all. But hey, I appreciate the response. I like the creativity. Just it is rare when you see a top pick like that get traded at the NHL draft. It just does not happen really at all. And it's so funny because Mike Beer was like, oh yeah, like, you know, I can maybe shop it around or something like that, or I'll take calls on it. We all know he is not going to trade that pick.
And this is going to sound crazy. I'm not going to spend too much time on it because we got a lot of good responses to this. I think the more likely pick, even though I still think it's very unlikely to get moved, is the first overall pick, because Toronto's a team that I look at where they are as an organization right now, and I'm not saying Gavin McKenna won't help you. Gavin McKenna will help you. But where they are as an organization, they're going to need more than just Gavin McKenna. They're running out of picks. They don't have a ton of prospects. So that one could net you a lot more. So I do think that that would be more likely as opposed to San Jose, who, don't look now, they're building the mid-2000s Penguins with the amount of prospects they're getting in their system. So just keep that in mind. But keeping it moving here, we did have one for somebody who wants Dubas to call Dallas. This comes from Justin Greenman. He says, Thomas Harley for Tristan Brose, Yoel Blomqvist in the Penguins' second-round pick. I like both Brose and Blomqvist, but I feel there isn't room for them. I don't think that's going to be enough to get Thomas Harley, but I do like where his head is on players like Brose and Blomqvist. I still like Brose's potential quite a bit. I like his talent, but he is starting to a little bit kind of fit into the same realm that Blomqvist is, where other players are stepping up and taking that spot. Obviously, we know with Sergei Murashov, Taylor Gauthier, Gabriel Daig, that Blomqvist might be an attractive piece to trade because he's kind of stuck in a bit of a purgatory with where the depth is. And you can kind of say the same for Brose. But again, I look at this deal and I think if you're Dallas and you want someone to call you for Thomas Harley, you're probably going to need a little bit more.
Not just a little bit. I think you're going to need a lot more. He has a big contract. The extension is set to kick in right after the season. It's over $10 million. This is a player who is still in his early to mid 20s. And don't get me wrong, Thomas Harley, I'd love to get my hands on him. I just don't know if Dallas is going to do that, because I think they're going to look to move other players on the roster to fit Jason Robertson. And they also, again, like they just extended Harley, like for that big extension, and that money hasn't even kicked in yet. And Justin, I appreciate your trade proposal. It is going to take a lot more than Tristan Brose, Yoel Blomqvist in the second round pick to go and pry Thomas Harley out of there. If he gets made available, you're looking at a first, an even bigger prospect, an even better roster player, potentially another pick on top of that as well. That's just like, if you were to get Thomas Harley, like saying like a fantasy land for that offer that Justin put out there, that is a fleecing among all fleecings. Like, I think that's a trade offer that probably gets Jim Nill fired out of Dallas. I think it takes a lot more to get someone like Thomas Harley out of there. That is a my opinion, a bona fide number one defenseman on at least half the teams in the league.
Yeah, and I agree. If Nil made that trade and I'm Dallas, he's getting called into the office the next day and being thanked for his services. We're moving on. Two quick ones here. We'll start with one that it gave me a bit of a laugh, but I also look at it and went, you know what? Not the worst idea. From Austin, he says, sign Kulak if the plan is to hold on to Letang for next season. Saves the year-long process of finding him a reliable partner. I mean, so when he did play his best hockey, so I've heard worse ideas, but I bet he's probably going to get paid elsewhere. So that one might be a bit out of range, but I like where your head is. And then this one from Tom99, calling Columbus on Kent Johnson or calling Anaheim on Owen Zellweger. I don't think Columbus is going to move on from Kent Johnson. They're another team that I think is on the come up, and Kent Johnson's going to be a big part of that. But for Anaheim, Owen Zellweger does seem like someone that they're dangling out there, and he fits that profile of the type of player Kyle Dubas has been targeting. And if you can swap some picks and some prospects to bring Owen Zellweger to Pittsburgh, I would certainly be intrigued.
Yeah, Zellweger, he is the type of player that I do think he would go out and get. Young player in his early 20s, just wrapped up his third season with the Ducks, had 7 goals and 22 points in 76 games. You go to the playoffs, only played in 3 games for the Ducks, but did score a big goal for them in one of those 3 games, also had 2 points in those 3 games. If you can pry him out of there and look at him as a potential long-term option on the left side, I'd be down for that. Ken Johnson, I don't think Columbus has any interest in dealing another young player to the Penguins after they saw what happened with Igor Chinakhov. And number 2, I did see reports that I think they want to keep him for next season, unless that's changed by now. But the last time I saw, I think they want to keep him. But I like where your head is at. And as for the other one you mentioned, when it comes to Kulak, yeah, I just don't think that's going to happen, but maybe a defenseman like him who's a little bit younger. So that's kind of where I am on that one. And that kind of gets into what Morbius said. I'm getting a left shot top 4 defenseman who's under 30. My biggest issue with the team this year was defense. So that would be my move. Who exactly fits that criteria, I'm not sure, but that's what I'm looking for. And yeah, like Pat and I have been talking about this all week. I think it's one of their biggest holes going into the offseason is another reliable top 4 defenseman, specifically someone who could potentially be a long-term option on the top pair for not just the short term, but the long term as well. So I do think that's going to be a big goal for them this offseason. And then Erica Franklin signing Gino already. Yes, like obviously that is one of our biggest things. Hopefully it happens here sooner rather than later. Get that 1-year extension done. But otherwise, yeah, we got some pretty good responses this week. Penn 68 even talked about Mason McTavish. That is also, I think, a Kyle Dubas type move, but I'm kind of under the assumption that the Ducks are going to try to make this work next year. Just really off this year for him, but they just signed him to that big deal, Pat. I think they're going to try to commit to this for at least 1 more year before looking to move on. I just don't know if he's going to be made available this offseason.
I do think with McTavish, they're going to give him 1 more year. They're going to give him one last chance just because he's young enough and he's got enough raw talent that you would rather see if he can figure it out before you deal him away. And I don't think this is going to be like some big cautionary tale that the rest of the NHL pays attention to, but I do think there are a lot of teams, not all of them, but a lot of teams that looked at the Igor Chinakhov trade this year and went, yeah, we probably shouldn't totally give up on our young, talented players and send them away because they might figure it out. Now, if McTavish has another year like he did this year, next season, he definitely would start to fall and look like a change of scenery candidate. But with where the Ducks are and how surprising they were this year with how much potential they have, you want to hold on to that guy and you want to see if he figures it out. So I like where everybody's head is on targeting him, but I look at the Ducks as a younger team, a lot of potential, surprise run this year with how good they were, with how deep, quote unquote, deep they got into the playoffs. So they're probably going to hold on to him. And we'll finish it with this, like we always do on Fan Take Friday from our pal Matty NCS. I am satisfied with the direction of the Pittsburgh Penguins. I am as well. I think it was been a pretty good season despite the ending, and there's a lot of potential in the system, and I like the plan. But
we have two people who are committed to the bit. I am satisfied with the Pittsburgh Penguins, and we have a new one recently, Pat, where this person is amused by the work that Dan has done. So I appreciate these two lines. If anyone wants to come up with any more, drop them in the comments, send us DMs on socials, please. These two already are pretty hilarious.
We always enjoy it when people commit to the bit. But that is going to do it for the Friday edition of Locked On Penguins. Hunter and I will be back with a brand new episode for you on Monday, continuing our season in review series, checking in on the Wheeling Nailers and any other news that might happen over the weekend. But for now, for Hunter Hodes, I am Patrick Damp. Thank you as always for tuning in, and we will be back on Monday.